What I want to achieve is I want to avoid people picking up the knife in the first place. Yeah. I don't just want to catch them. If they're out, I want to catch them.
Very keen to make sure that children understand that those decisions that they make will have lifelong ramifications for them.
Yeah. How young would somebody pick a knife up for the wrong reason?
The fact of the matter is that knife crime it's a ripple effect.
The city was grieving, in essence, and we're definitely in a better place now.
This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by our digital media partner, DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Good morning, ladies. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Now, Amanda, this isn't your first rodeo here, is it?
No, it's not.
In fact, I think you're probably our most common guest.
What, frequent flyer?
Yeah, common doesn't sound right with mentioning Amanda Marlow and Emma as well. So, Amanda, first of all, for those that perhaps don't know you, just introduce yourself and then hand over to Emma, please.
Okay. My name is Amanda Marlow, and I am the Marketing and Business Development Manager for the Safety Centre.
Emma?
I'm Emma Baillie. I'm the Area Commander for Thames Valley Police's Milton Keynes area. So I'm a Chief Superintendent, and I'm also the thematic lead for knife crime for Thames Valley Police.
Excellent. And you're definitely the first police officer that we've ever had. So what a police officer to have as our
Indeed.
First officer on the podcast. Now, ladies, we're going to talk about something that's really quite serious in terms of knife crime. And we're going to talk about the impact that the work that I suppose both of you do in your respective organisations in and around Milton Keynes. If we go back to 2022, it was a real sort of serious year for the Milton Keynes community. I think there were 7 murders.
Yeah, there was 6 or 7 murders, depending on which bit you count. But essentially, I came into Milton Keynes in April 2023 on the back end of a really difficult time that Milton Keynes had as a city. There were several murders, which were all knife-based. But I think what really cut deep in relation to that is the fact that a lot of the people involved were youths. So either the victims were youths or the offenders were youths. So it was essentially... it increased fear in Milton Keynes. I remember as somebody who was a resident nearby to Milton Keynes at the time that I had friends who were saying, can I send my kids out to parties? This is awful. It was all in the news. The city was grieving, in essence. And we're definitely in a better place now. And obviously I'm here today to talk to you a bit about why we're in a better place and what we need to do going forward. Yeah,
so, I mean, like you said, you came in at the end of that horrible year. Talk me through, go back to those first few weeks or first few months in charge.
Yeah.
What was your agenda, if you like, for how do you start a new post in that position?
So obviously Milton Keynes is a big city, but it's not just the city. We've got the rural area around that we also cover, so it's quite different to police. With any police commander, our challenges are trying to work out how we use our resources best to manage the most amount of risk and how we deliver the best service to the public. So with knife crime at that particular time being a real pertinent issue, that was my key priority, was to get knife crime down and improve confidence in policing in Milton Keynes as a result. It wasn't the only thing for me to deliver, it was just a key thing, and obviously that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So when you've got with Milton Keynes, it's important to explain that it's a very diverse city, and that brings strengths because there are so many different communities in Milton Keynes. But what I always notice is how well they all join up together. And I was coming in on the back end of that. Now, there was one particular community that was hit the hardest through the knife crime, and that was the Somalian community. So when I got here, I was already coming on the back of some really, really good work by my predecessors. We also have a community and diversity officer called Neelam. Neelam is amazing. She essentially is our front door into understanding our different communities in Milton Keynes. She's a point of contact for all of them. She identifies others. She she's basically out there understanding
as the
who
nucleus
lives
and brings people together.
She's brilliant. So I was coming on the back of some of her really good work that she's continuing now, which kind of understands what are the root causes of the issues, what is causing kids to pick up knives and stab each other. And predominantly, in the cases in 2021-22, was drug-related gang crime. I'm not talking gangs like in London, which have got some sort of control system structure where they all work I'm talking about groups of kids who are involved in drug dealing, and they have issues between them, and it kind of escalates from there, and they're carrying knives to protect themselves, and it all goes wrong from there.
And of course, we were just coming out of the pandemic then as well. Do you think that would have had any impact at all in terms of the fact that children were cut off from friends and obviously not going to school, etc. at the time?
It's hard to say. I don't know whether or not you see any of that where...
I think, definitely. I think children really found it difficult to sort of reconnect with one another because there was, if you can remember back, they were almost segregated.
And depending on the year, I mean, from a lot of the schools that we
Exactly.
work with in Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes, I think it's only really been this last year and maybe currently where you're seeing the ramifications from those children that are perhaps sitting GCSEs now in terms of what they came out of during that pandemic period.
Yeah.
Because of that, they were, in some cases they didn't see their friends for several months.
Yeah, and I think that has a huge effect on children, especially I think when you're looking at some of the social media groups, WhatsApp groups, that really flourished during the pandemic, and with that, I would sort of think that probably a fair amount of bullying and coercion as well amongst those who had a bit more power than they should have done over some of these young people.
So, Emma, carry on telling us about that then.
So 2023 was when I came in, and as the summer approached and the days got longer and the weather got nicer, we started to see an increase again in some of the knife crime and some of the stabbings. And we were seeing, when I say kids, I'm talking up to sort of 20s. We were seeing teenagers and people in their young 20s in hospital again. And although we didn't have any homicides, we were still dealing with people whose lives were at risk. And we were still dealing with that side of things. So we set up an operation, which we called Operation Dilemma that summer. And we tackled knife crime from a policing perspective, although I want to talk about the broader perspective in a second. We tackled it from all ends. So we had a CID team that were running an incident room in relation to all the crime, the violence that was going on. We obviously had intelligence around what was happening and what might be happening. And out of that, alongside our harm reduction unit, who work with children's social care to make sure we've got the right diversion tactics in place, we managed to get nearly 90 charges that summer. Wow. And we've put a lot of people on remand and have got hefty prison sentences. I mean, even now, talking now today, 7 out of our 10 most serious habitual knife carriers, adults, are currently in prison on remand. So there is definitely a role for policing. 100% in policing, in relentlessly pursuing offenders who carry knives, use knives, and other things. But obviously the reason I'm here today is I want to talk about that more public health approach. Yeah. So when I came in 2023, we just had the Knife Angel.
Yes.
Which some of your listeners will remember. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so iconic. And when you think of, I cannot imagine what families have gone through that have been victims of knife crime. But when you actually see, I saw it when it was here in Northampton, and it just took your breath away, because you see it online, and nothing is like seeing it in reality. Yeah. And it's a great initiative. And that went to Milton Keynes in
December 22.
22.
Yeah. So we had, it was basically a month-long call to action around knife crime prevention. As a charity, the Safety Centre were heavily involved with providing educational workshops around knife crime prevention. And we worked very closely with Thames Valley Police and other partners to try and, see as many children as we possibly could to educate about knife crime. And, that work is carrying on to this day. It's something that we are still very, very keen to promote, because it's, because the figures now have kind of gotten much better, but it doesn't mean that our attention should step away from it. We still need to give this just as much focus as was given back in 22-23.
Milton Keynes is in a much safer place now, but that's because of the efforts that have been going on, the activities over the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be maintained.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we still want schools to come in and to have knife crime education.
As a parent of 3, I don't know if I want to ask. Well, if I want to ask this, but how young would somebody pick a knife up for the wrong reason? From either of your experience?
That's quite a hard one, I think, Ben. We educate from year 5, so which is roughly, I think, age 10.
9?
Yeah, that's about right.
To talk to them about knife crime prevention and to talk about, the causes and consequences of carrying a knife, the choices they make, the consequences of those actions, because the age of criminal responsibility is from the age of 10.
Yeah.
So it is a message that we are very keen to make sure that children understand that those decisions that they make will have lifelong ramifications for them.
Yeah. And their family.
And their family.
Yeah.
I think the fact of the matter is that knife crime it's a ripple effect. It's not just the perpetrator and the victim. It's their families. It's their wider community. It's their schools. It's the businesses involved.
Yep.
And their whatever religious background they're from. It's a huge ripple across a community, and it's something that affects every single person who's within that area. So it's something that I feel really strongly about, that we have to make sure that we are still pushing that education to get kids to understand that they don't need to be involved in that. If anything, what they need to do is they need to step away. They need to ring the police and report an incident if they see it happening.
We need to make carrying a knife socially unacceptable in the way that we have with
Smoking.
a variety of different things. Smoking, drink driving. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but we need to make it socially unacceptable, and we need our kids growing up to make the right choices. So we will first identify where we'll first know about kids carrying knives at the lower level, when perhaps bring it to school thinking it's a bit of a joke, and the school will deal with it appropriately and various different things, and the school's officer will be involved. But then as things escalate, you've obviously got the other end of the spectrum where people are getting stabbed and murdered, and it's everything in the middle. So knife crime harm, as in the harm that is being caused by it, has definitely come down in Milton Keynes, but the occurrences of people carrying knives is still an issue. It's still disproportionate in Milton Keynes than it is in other cities in Thames Valley, which is why we still have significant work surrounding it, why we still need the work of the Safety Centre and other charities that are doing knife crime awareness sessions. What the Safety Centre offer is volume. It's the volume of the kids that are going through. So when we talk about a public health approach to knife crime, what we're looking at is that preventative bit before people start making the bad decisions. In policing, we're about when it's almost a little bit too late, and we have to. That's
a really good way of describing that.
Yeah, I mean, so when you look at the the Safety Centre started up life in 1994, and in that time we have educated over 500,000 people.
Wow.
Which is a lot, and predominantly children. The last, so 23, 24, we had over 30,000 people through our education services, either that at Hazard Alley, our education centre, or our education team going out into schools. Vast majority of them will have had some type of knife crime education within that education that they've received, be it via antisocial behaviour or as actual knife crime itself. They will have received those messages, and they are really, really powerful, because at the end of the day, I mean, all 3 of us parents, you want your kids to grow up safe and happy and not get harmed.
I'm showing my age, but when we're approaching the summer holidays, aren't we? When I was growing up as a kid, I used to go out after breakfast, and my time to come home was when the lamppost came on.
Yeah.
And I'm only talking about the 90s. It wasn't that long ago. I wouldn't let. I've got a 16-year-old, 13-year-old, a 6-year-old. I would reluctantly let Taylor walk around Rushden Lakes, for example, and that's not a criticism of any local authority. I think that's just the way society is, nationally, and it's that. I'd be worried.
I think there's a term, isn't there? Helicopter parents.
And I think sometimes my wife in particular is probably too, like, we've got. It sounds bad, but my boy is 6 and he's going to Hunstanton on a trip in July, and the only way that she's going to let him go is if me or her are going as one of the volunteers. And I've put myself forward to go because I've got the DBS check, etc., whereas she hasn't, only because she doesn't need it for work, whereas I do. But that's more because of her worry, and I think she doesn't listen to every podcast, so I can say this.
Just safe.
But I think she's probably too extreme in terms of almost protecting them, and so much that then when they do become adults, they get an even bigger shock because they don't know what the real world is out there. And I think that's just, and we have had this conversation around, you can protect them too much, and then actually that restricts them then in terms of when they are an adult, because then it's almost gosh, is this really what the big world's like?
I mean, it's funny. I had so I was interviewed a few weeks ago by BBC local radio about knife crime, and the presenter was, and he's got young children, and he was horrified that we're educating children year 5 and 6 about knife crime, and I sat there thinking, well, hang on a second. Why are you horrified? Because surely it is much better for those children to actually be aware that these things happen. You can't bubble wrap kids. It's actually it's not a good thing to do to them, because they need to understand resilience.
But I get that, but I also appreciate where he or she might be coming from, because I think there's this, and I put myself into this camp a little bit as well, naivety, because you think. You hear things, particularly on the national news. You think, that wouldn't happen in my neighbourhood. That won't happen around here. That it's almost like one of those. And but then when you realise, and I don't want to get bogged down with statistics at all, but the statistics locally have come down, which is great, and that's because of initiatives like yours, hard work, that having that conversation and making awareness. But I do also think that it's, for some people, particularly parents that have got kids that aren't quite at that age, they think, and yet they it's big decisions, because they could be, if they get in with the wrong crowd even at year 7 or year 8, then all of a sudden they could be on a road of a slippery road. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom. But Emma, if I may come to you, a Section 60 search, because I did do some research beforehand. Just for those that don't know what a Section 60 is, just to talk us through that, please.
So, without giving the technical terms, in essence, where we're concerned that there's going to be, or there either has been or there is likely to be some serious violence, we can put a Section 60 stop and search in place. So, whereas a normal stop and search, if I was to see you on the street, for me to stop and search you, I'd have to have reasonable grounds to suspect that you've got something on you that you shouldn't. That I won't go into all the ins and outs, but in essence. So there has to be reasonable grounds for you as an individual for me to stop and search. If we put a Section 60 in place, we designate a location. We designate an area. It could be an estate. It could arguably be a good portion of Milton Keynes. And it allows our officers to search without that specific reasonable grounds to suspect for that particular individual. The fact that they're in that location, they can get searched. So back in 2023, when we had what I would call the summer of knife crime issues, although it didn't lead to any murders, thank goodness, we were using Section 60s a lot. Whereas now it's rare very, very rare. So some of it is the Section 60 is about publicising it to people, letting them know that that's what we're doing. And some of it is about getting people to think twice before they pick the knife up and walk out the house. So we tend to put them in place when we think that there's going to be repercussions to an event that's happened. So it's not a picture of several hundred police officers flooding and searching everybody they see in a particular area. That doesn't happen in reality. I wouldn't have the resources for that even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's not proportionate use of the power. But it is about notifying the public that there's a problem, letting them know that what we intend to do about it, and hoping that those that are planning to walk out the house with a knife think twice. And some people will criticise it and they will say, well, you shouldn't let them know, you shouldn't tell them. But actually, what I want to achieve is I want to avoid people picking up the knife in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't just want to catch them. If they're out, I want to catch them.
I think you summarised it perfectly earlier when you said it's all the preventative, the awareness and the conversations is the preventative action, and clearly that's working. But the key message here is that it's working and it needs to continue to work. And the only way you can do that is by having conversations like this.
Yeah, and I think, it's what the work that Thames Valley Police have done has been incredible, and Milton Keynes does feel a lot safer, for sure. I mean, I know I've got my kids are sort of early 20s, and they definitely, don't feel quite so sort of nervous, shall we say, about walking, whereas before they would have been. I think, from the point of view that we have to, just keep our eye on the ball. Don't take your eye off the ball. Because this is something that could quite easily, if you become complacent, start to slip. And we don't want that, because we want Milton Keynes to be a really safe, dynamic place to grow up in. We want businesses to create businesses in Milton Keynes because it's dynamic, it's happening, it's all of those things.
Do you know over 70% of businesses that are in Milton Keynes started in Milton Keynes?
Okay.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but actually that doesn't surprise me.
I learned that on Love MK Day, which was last month.
I think the thing with Milton Keynes is one of those places that it just gets under your skin, because it's so young and energetic.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really key factor about it all. It's not going to be held back by anything, and I think the knife crime issues that we've had are something that it's basically saying, okay, yeah, it's happened, but we're not going to let that stop us. We're going to keep pushing on to be a really fantastic city, and that is because TVP, partners of TVP, local authority, charities, we're all working together, the YMCA, for the same goal, because we want Milton Keynes to be fantastic.
I've really noticed that since I've come here. There's a real buzz.
Yeah.
There's everyone, when I meet people out and about at various different events, I always sense that there's always people wanting to do more.
Yeah.
The voluntary sector's huge,
Yeah.
but never big enough, obviously. But what we need to do is turn that enthusiasm into to funding, keeping these schemes going, because I don't want to be sat here in 4 years' time saying we've gone back to 2022, 23. So we are in a good place. It came down 20%. 2023 into 24, which is considerable, and that will have been because of all the work that we did and all the conversations that were happening out at the Knife Angel, at the Safety Centre, all the partnership work, and it's come down again, the following year by 5%. But we do need to keep on top of it. We need to keep it coming down. We don't need it to creep back up again.
Do you know if there's any plans for the Knife Angel to come back to Milton Keynes?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's one of those. It was in Luton last year, I think. Wasn't it, or early this year? It's one of those things that I think it's like a one-stop thing. Things got to a point, and there were certain people within TVP and various local politicians and charities who basically all clamoured to get the Knife Angel in, because we'd reached a crisis point.
Yeah.
I live in Milton Keynes. There were those two young lads who were stabbed at a party, which was just horrendous, because that really affected my area. because a lot of those families came from where I live. The young lad who was stabbed outside Milton Keynes College. I mean, that was shocking, and it wasn't anything to do with the college. It was just location, but the work that Neelam, who does all the diversity work within Thames Valley Police. I was approached by somebody from the Somali community, a woman, and she said, we need to talk to people about what's happening within our community. And the problems that Thames Valley Police had been having was that the doors were shut to them. Mm-hmm. So I managed to basically pull some of these ladies together, and Matthew Barber and Emma's predecessor, and got them in a room at the safety centre, and we all sat down and had a conversation about what was happening within Milton Keynes to their kids, because the problem they were finding was they were women and their voices weren't being heard, and it was really, really important for them to be able to say their piece. So and I think it was incredibly powerful and effective, and it certainly helped to start shaping the work that Neelam and her colleagues were doing.
Mm. Yeah, she's built on that sense. So I'm very lucky. I've got very good connections with community leaders who can reach back into their communities, and we can have those very difficult conversations, sometimes behind closed doors and sometimes more publicly. The communities benefit from it. I know that because they encourage it, and we definitely do from a policing perspective. It's not about us targeting communities, it's about us protecting them.
Yes. No, brilliant. Okay. So Emma, we're approaching the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like our audience to know or learn about, or anything that we could do to help you and your colleagues, do your job to the best of your ability in terms of support?
Well, in essence, the policing works on us being told what's going on. So it's reporting things to us, and it's letting us know. And, if you've got information of people that carry knives, ultimately, we would prefer, if kids are carrying knives, for it to be dealt with. Parents manage it, teachers and various different things. But if you feel that the police need to know, we need to know. So we will deal with things like that, and we will take a proportionate response. So, yes, even if it is actually one piece of the jigsaw and someone doesn't think it's important, actually it might fit the rest of the jigsaw that we've already started to build. So I certainly think from that perspective, but really for me it's about how do we sustain that knife crime awareness for our younger generation to start making those right decisions. And my plea really is to businesses and out there in Milton Keynes, that if you do want to support local charities, is please don't forget knife crime. It hasn't gone away. So please, can you consider that side of things and keep Milton Keynes the city that we all love and to work in.
Amanda?
So from my point of view, the Safety Centre charity that I work for, we have our immersive centre called Hazard Alley, which hopefully a lot of your audience will have heard of, or their children have been there, or they've been around themselves. Yes, exactly.
I loved it. I thought I was going into Kidzania when I first went in there.
I know, you were so hilarious. But, we're a small charity, and in all honesty, we are finding it very, very tough right now, to the point that Hazard Alley could actually close. So my call to action really is for businesses, please, to, show us some love, please. Financial support, schools to come in, pay for schools. If you got kids and they haven't been to Hazard Alley and you think that your school could, benefit from that, then why don't you organise a trip and send those children to Hazard Alley?
Choose you as the charity of the year.
Choose us as the charity of the year.
Yeah, I think that's a great initiatives there. Okay, now Amanda, you've done this before.
Okay, ask Emma.
Emma, you wouldn't have done. Well, no, I'm going to come to you first to give Emma some time.
Really?
Emma, I'm going to ask you if you having dinner on Saturday, 4 people, past or present, who would your dinner guests be?
Okay.
Now I'm just throwing that on you. So Amanda's answered this a couple of times. I'd be interested to see what your previous answer has been, Amanda, just to see where you...
Yeah, no.
So go on, you go, and then you give Emma a moment to...
So Cary Grant, because he was always very witty and urbane and quite beautiful. Who else? I would have Lord Blackadder, actually, because I am a massive Rowan Atkinson fan and I love Blackadder.
He's Northamptonshire, you know. He lives in Northamptonshire.
Is he? Oh, okay. Well, Rowan, I'd definitely have you for dinner. Who else would I...
That came out very wrong.
Who else would I have? Somebody recent, maybe. Barack Obama.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Good.
Don't
get us blocked on YouTube by saying anybody else.
No, I'm certainly not saying anybody else. Good grief, no. Thank you very much. And probably Prince William, actually.
Yeah.
I really like Prince William. There's something about him. He's so engaging, really smart, switched on guy, and he's going to be a fantastic king. He really is.
So will his son.
Yeah. George.
George. And I like the
Louis?
He's
hilarious.
Yeah.
Did you see? Did you see him?
Yeah.
Like mimicking his brother? I know. Oh my word!
Just every family can relate to a Louis, can't they? Not necessarily George.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Yeah. And it's our food and drink feature this month. So, where would you go to restaurant be in Milton Keynes? And ideally an independent one.
Oh, right.
Favourite place to eat out?
Favourite. Do you know what? I'd probably go to the Cross Keys in Wallstones.
Okay. So, Emma, coming to you now. Who would your dinner guest be?
Okay. 4? Did you say? 4.
Yeah, 4.
Okay. I'm going to start with David Attenborough.
Oh,
good choice.
Don't think it needs an explanation, does it?
No.
I mean, he's a legend, isn't he?
No, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I thought of him. That was a good one.
Okay. The next one is going to be a little bit off, bit different. I'm going to say Field Marshal Slim. And the reason I'm going to say that, when I was about 18, I had a short experience with the military. And I remember reading a book. And he talked about all his challenges in the Second World War of leading essentially the army in the East and all the challenges, logistics and looking after people. And he talks a really good leadership talk in relation to sort of people first, people-centred leadership, really. That's not what he calls it. It's more complicated than that. But I thought that was quite inspiring, and that inspired me at quite a young age in relation to leadership style. And then I'm going to be a bit cheeky. I'm going to say my 2 teenage daughters. And the reason I'm going to say that is because I made the fatal parental error of about when they were about 12, of letting them go upstairs with their dinner. And I don't think I've seen them since. So I'm going to say my 2 daughters sat at the dining room table would be quite spectacular. So if I can cheat slightly, I'm going to say them.
No, very good. Well, I introduced it about a year ago. Yeah, and I've made a commitment to I've got 3 children and my wife, and said, right, we're going to have 2 meals a week where we're all at the dinner table.
Tried
and there's
that.
No phones.
Tried that.
And they're all fine with it now, apart from Rocco, who's insistent on still having his iPad at the table. But he's the difficult one now. But yeah,
Is he the 6-year-old?
Yeah, but we do try. Sometimes you don't want to just have a row with a 6-year-old. So
you're going to hate me.
You put it on mute.
We have dinner together every night.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd see that, and they're the simple things in life that you go, do you know what? That would be amazing. Due to work commitments, I can't always do that.
No. And so when I had my my year as mayor, my poor husband basically
didn't see
didn't see me and had to really up his game.
What,
so
cookery wise?
Yeah, well, he had to stop being the sling and ding king and actually start cooking things because my kids were like, really, Dad, seriously, microwave
Beans on
pasta
toast
again. Nice. Yes, not having your microwave scrambled eggs. It's legendary in its awfulness. So.
And Emma, where would be your go-to sort of where's your favourite restaurant or?
Oh, I don't know. That's fair
food.
To ask me in the role I'm in.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Because I would get accused.
Oh,
of
would you?
something.
All right, okay, yeah.
But,
all right, don't. Sorry.
Yes,
Right.
but yeah, lots of lovely places in Milton Keynes to
There
eat.
is. Ladies, thank you ever so much. Keep doing amazing work, because it is having a massive positive impact on the community. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for
and
having
to
us.
your colleagues. And thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Ben.